Hello, everyone. Someone had to do a presentation after lunch. So I hope the second cup of coffee is doing its job. And you can stay with me with full attention for the next 12 minutes because what I want to say is very important. Hi, my name is Sharmeen Hakim. I'm a journalist, an author, a partial lawyer, law graduate, and a peace fellow from Mumbai in India. That's my safe place. That's a picture of me and my mother. And by the time I'm done with this presentation, you'll know why I started here. Today, I want to talk about peace and how it's built in the most violent place in the world, the carceral system or in prisons. More specifically, I want to talk about the most overlooked population on the discourse on prisons, the families. Someone once asked me, why do you study incarceration? Nobody, it's so negative and nobody wants to hear about it. And it took me back to the first day I entered a courtroom. I braced for monsters, but I didn't see them. I saw mothers, I saw partners, and I saw children being disciplined on court rules. And that's when I realized that families are collateral damage in this discourse on incarceration, or that law relegates so deep into the margins that they almost become invisible. After I arrived in the United States, I continued my researching on and with families of incarcerated people, but with renewed theoretical vigor. And that's when I met Rotarian Mr. Richard McCleary from the Durham Rotary Club. And he encouraged me to explore the same subject that I was studying in India here in the United States. And I'm very grateful to him because that one conversation opened a door. I found myself interviewing formerly incarcerated people in the Carborough soup kitchen. I found myself another day in the Hillsborough Penitentiary in circle with other people who had caused harm. But most importantly, over the last year, I found myself with the women, the backbone of this system, and I interviewed several of them. So today I want to tell you about Shaina. Shaina was born in Flint, Michigan, in a neighborhood so violent it engulfs one's ability to dream. She was raised by a single mother alongside three siblings and an absentee father. Shaina was just 3 years old when she watched the weight of the world break her mother's back. Her mother worked at Walmart, and the heavy lifting left her mother disabled. She and her siblings were then being brought up and raised on just $800 a month. The desperation of poverty pulled both her brothers into the system. Her sister moved away too. But Shaina's mother was always in her face. There were no late night parties. There was no sleepovers, and that paid off because Shaina graduated and then she became a college counselor. Shaina met her husband and she knew about his prior convictions, but they were in his youth and they were drug related. And her mother approved of him, so she approved of him because she watched him show up differently than her father did. He was there for her daughter every single day, a child that wasn't even his own. But he couldn't find employment because of his prior convictions and record. And then came the arrest. He was found in possession of a firearm and he got 5 years in prison. Shaina's life changed overnight. Her responsibilities doubled. She now homeschools her 10-year-old to protect her from the stigma of having a dad in prison. She puts money on her husband's phone and waits for a 15-minute call. She tries to pack in everything in those 15 minutes. She pays to say, I love you. She pays to say, I miss you. As communications in prison is a huge corporate lobby. She absorbs half the lost income. She buys commissary items because the prison doesn't provide warm shoes in the winter. Toiletries the state can easily afford. She pays for food because what's provided is inedible. She pays for mortgage. She checks on his parents who did manual labor their entire life. And then Shaina drives 6 hours, leaving her children behind, books a hotel, plans meals, everything only to meet her husband in visitation. Shaina hates visitation. It's humiliating and it's dehumanizing. She can be turned away for wearing something deemed too flashy. Then come the pat downs, the underwire bra removal, the lift your hair, turn around, all to sit in front of the man she married for just 2 hours. The average annual cost to maintain communications with someone in prison is $4,200. And then I asked her, so Shaina, what would you change about this system? And I quote, what I would change about the system is how they treat loved ones, people who come in with empathy and compassion. Even if someone made a mistake, they're still people and people deserve second chances. Everyone deserves to be loved. We shouldn't be treated like nothing because we love someone they think is nothing. We are in prison too. We are incarcerated too. I probed her further. I said, but there must be something. She said, I know my presence makes a difference. I bring him peace and I see growth every day. And that's why I show up. Shaina sees what the rest of us don't. She sees growth. And that's when I realized that families are not collateral damage. They are peace builders working from the margins, and their well being should be at the core of any policy on incarceration. Shaina is not alone. Alice sold her bed and other household items to raise her husband's biological daughter from his previous relationship because he was showing up differently. And then there was Kira, who did trauma healing workbooks with her husband in prison. And both of them started an NGO while her husband was still incarcerated. He still is. She from the outside and he from the inside. They divert young people away from the system because a husband doesn't want another child to have the faith that he did. But Kira's visitation rights were revoked the moment she started exposing prison conditions. My research shows these women advocate when the state neglects. They show up when no services exist. They are not peripheral to the questions of peace and justice. They are the unrecognized infrastructure of repair. Some countries honor their dignity and understand the cyclical process of violence. In Saudi Arabia, programs provide rent, utilities, food, and scholarships for children of incarcerated breadwinners. Their imprisonment and reoffending rates are significantly lower. Norway uses the principle of normality. Re-entry planning begins from day one. So prisons are designed to resemble the home. They have child-friendly officers, family visits. Their recidivism and reoffending rates are just 20%. The US stands at 67%. We would hope to bring these reforms right here where we are, but the scale of incarceration makes it complicated. The United States incarcerates more people than any country in the world. Despite just 4% of the world's population, 20% of the world's prisoners are in prison here. But that's not the scale of the problem. 113 million Americans have had an immediate family member imprisoned. That's 1 in 3 people. Incarceration is not an individual experience, it's a family experience. The economic cost of mass incarceration on families with a loved one behind bars is approximately 348 billion annually in the United States. Let that number sink in. But what's the breakup of the 348 billion? There's loss of income for formerly incarcerated people, like Shaina's husband who couldn't find employment. There's loss of income for children who are affected the most. There's a generational tax that these children have to pay because of the trauma, educational disruption, and unstable upbringings. They are most likely to support a parent behind bars. And then there's the hidden tax, the type that China pays every single day for the phone calls, the visitations, just to keep their loved ones warm, fed, and human. So I ask, who benefits from this current system? Not the victims, who often feel like they're not heard in the process, in the legal process. Not taxpayers, who fund to stop a cycle of violence that just doesn't seem to break. Not families like Shaina's, whose economic futures and children's lives are diminished by the system. Not incarcerated people who return home more traumatized than they went in. And therefore, I propose a family-centered approach to imprisonment. I propose that we learn about the impact of imprisonment on families in the United States. We invite a speaker to the Rotary Club. We remove the stigma of incarceration. We engage facilitators for a dialogue. And then the Prison Policy Initiative has proposed concrete and bite-sized reform bills you can support in your state. You can access this information by scanning the QR code, because in the United States, 80% of the bills don't fail because of lack of evidence, they fail because of lack of belief. That can change today. The third component of this family-centered approach is a different approach to violence itself. Many here must be familiar with the concept of restorative justice. A few of the attorneys who I interviewed and who represent people on death row are pursuing this form of justice. They ask the person who was harmed, what are your needs? And then they ask the person who caused the harm if they would take accountability. The two come together in circle along with mediators, communities, and their families to come up with a repair agreement to the satisfaction of the victim. This is happening right here in Durham. Now I want to bring you back to the photograph of my mother. In my childhood journal, my mother wrote, "Whatever mistakes you make, whatever you become, we will always have a place in our hearts, our lives, and home for you. Our family has been built on a rock-solid foundation of love." I understand her words differently now. How similar these words are to Shaina's. That unconditional belonging is what keeps communities safe. Love, not only punishment. What if we welcome people who serve their time with kindness and compassion? That's what makes peace possible. Thank you so much.